Hi guys, and welcome back to part 2 of the Jean-Baptiste Monge red cap paint. Where we left off last time was just me putting, I think it was light skin from Scale 75 on the miniature. What I'm doing now is just adding a tiny bit of Scale 75 pale skin, which is the lightest of all of their flesh tones. It's kind of an off-white ivory colour, into the airbrush, and I'm just going to do a tiny bit of highlight with this. Just a little bit though, really not a lot. And obviously you people who have watched me paint before will know that the miniature will not end up looking like it looks now. At the end of the process we're going to shade and add loads of other stuff to it, and we're going to glaze down the colours and everything else. What we're doing at the minute is road mapping in the flesh, and if we go lighter than we would normally go now, it doesn't matter because we're going to darken it down with a filter later. Okay, that's still too thin, as we can all see, which is infuriating. I want you all to know that I risk life and limb painting in here and recording without the extraction system on, because you can't hear me if the extraction system's on. So when I'm painting a commission or something, I will be, quite happily in here for hours with the extractor pulling the paint particles out. But when I'm recording YouTube, I can't really do that, so I end up having to breathe it all in, which is why I try and avoid using too much paint volume. Okay, there we go. So let's bring in the head, and I'm just going to do really close in, just the tip of the nose. The bridge of the nose and inside the one eye, and then just this bit here on the inner lip. Okay, that's that done. And on the main model itself, I'm going to do the shoulder muscles. The top of the pecs and the ribs. The fingers. That's fucking annoying. Okay, happy with that. Sorry, you can just see what I'm doing at the minute is just trying to clean a tip block. There's probably a paint particle or a bit of hair in there, so I'm just going to do the whole thing of unscrewing the back, slide the needle out, slide the needle back in again. It will in theory pull any of the shite with it. It should flow again. We can see it flows, which is good. Squeaky squeaky. Lovely. Okay, so the paint is on now, and I just want to pass the miniature around the camera and have a look. Okay, so that's cool. What I want to do is filter this a little bit, soften up the colours, and I'm going to use basic for that. I'm going to use light skin. No, I'm not going to use light skin. I'm going to use pink skin. Okay, I'm going to use the scale 75 or basic. Basic. I'm going to use scale 75 basic. Cut flesh. I'm going to just put a little bit into the airbrush with some thinners as normal. And what I want to do now is knock back how stark that skin up to white is. So we're going to apply a filter, which you've heard me talk about lots of times before. And that filter just softens out where it's really stark white areas and turns puts a bit more flesh, pinky flesh tone back into them, which is what you want. And then I'm going to go back to the pink now, the Indian shadow. And I'm going to just plot in a bit more of the shading again, just because I want to make sure I've kept that definition and not lost it or washed it out. Now this means getting in closer with the airbrush to the miniature. And there's a stage probably better done by a brush if you don't really know what you're doing with an airbrush. Good. Okay. What I was just doing there is putting in the shadow for where the staff of the halberd he's using will block the light from whatever the light source I'm going to use coming through would sit. So I've done I've put some what was I going to say? I've put some shading back into him again now. What I'm going to do now is just go back in with the light skin and just make sure the upper areas are all caught with the colour like I want them to be. So it's just a bit of trial and error. Put in, take out, put in, take out. Obviously the colour layers are really thin, so it doesn't have any particularly detrimental effect. It's not like when you're using a brush and you haven't thinned your paints properly and you're clagging it up. You could basically airbrush maybe 200-300 layers on one of these and it wouldn't have a really detrimental effect. Colour is bad. Okay, so just thinking about where I'm going to put it now. I'm going to spray from the angle of the staff, and I'm going to use that just to catch the shadow. Yep, happy with that. I'm happy with that. Okay, so it's important when you're airbrushing, once you put your colours on and you're happy with where they are, you've got to lock them in place. You need to fix the airbrush colours because they're so thin and the layers are so fine. You know, the slightest knock can remove them, and even a wet brush when you are glazing or you are blending later on can actually pull the pigment away, which is heartbreaking obviously if you've done a wonderful paint job up to a certain point and then something like that happens and you are back to square one. So using Vallejo matte varnish, diluting it with Vallejo airbrush thinners, I am going to just run a layer of varnish over the model and leave it to dry, and then I'm going to come back in the next part of the video and we'll do the reds on the hat. We'll start to put the colours in, and we need to make sure we are varnishing, because if we don't do that, obviously apart from the reason I just mentioned, if we don't do that and we are painting on blue tack, we're using blue tack or masking tape, the masking tape or the blue tack will just pull the colour off. So I'm going to be quite generous with the amount of varnish I use. seems like an ideal time for me to stop and go and have a cup of coffee whilst leaving this to dry naturally. Let's just have a look at this first. Right, so he says naturally and then uses an airbrush to dry it, but the minute it looks really shiny and wet, then that's not a good place to leave the video. Let me know what you think of the new video setup. I think the painting is much more on camera than it has been previously, and that's a good thing. I know that Chris Duchen's, my friend, commented on that with Duchesne. I can never remember how to pronounce his name properly. Chris. The guy's like a brother to me and I can't pronounce his surname. How terrible is that? Okie dokie, piggity pokey. Let's have a look at this. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to leave it there, go and get some fresh air, get a coffee, and I will come back and record another bit later. Cheers, bye.